So today is Thanksgiving in America, 2013. All across the country, people are getting together, eating turkey, watching some football, getting drunk, talking about family and tradition and shit. Really has nothing to do with the tradition of white people and Native Americans. It's totally devoid of all reality. It's a myth that there was a big happy feast. The Wampanoags actually brought the food to the Pilgrims because the Pilgrims didn't have enough food. But that wasn't Thanksgiving dinner. Nobody called it Thanksgiving at the time, and it was just a day, of celebration, and they had to give thanks on that day. So it was a Christian type of people Thanksgiving, but the official government Thanksgiving wasn't declared until 1637 with the Pequot War, until the day after the massacre on Mystic River of 400 to 500 Pequot old men, women, and children. It was terrorism. They burned down the Palisades, the fort, the wooden fort, and they burned down all the wigwams, all the houses. And actually, it was the Native Americans that taught, the white folks how to live. When white folks came to America, they were living in like mud huts. They were just stacking a bunch of wood together and putting mud on there. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing. They weren't farmers. They weren't woodsmen. They were businessmen. And they came over to America to extract its resources and to make money. And so that's the legacy of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is a festival, a holiday, which was stolen from the Native Americans, the Green Corn Festival, and it's a myth, so it's whitewashed history that actually covers up the largest genocide that's ever happened in the history of the world. When it comes to the genocide, the Puritans and the Pilgrims and Christopher Columbus and Daniel Boone and George Washington all engaged in, it absolutely, the death toll, the body count, it pales in comparison to Hitler. Hitler wasn't shit compared to Christopher Columbus. Hitler wasn't shit compared to the Puritans and the Pilgrims. They started genocide. Hitler looked to the Puritans and the Pilgrims and to Christopher Columbus for advice, for inspiration. He looked to Christopher Columbus and Daniel Boone in the asymmetrical warfare against the Native Americans with envy and delight. The genocide of the Native Americans by the English colonists when they first got here, since we're influenced by the English colonists. It was by the Spanish and the Portuguese and the Dutch also, right? So there's in the French. So there's lots of imperialistic European nations trying to get a hold of this soil. That was somebody else's soil. But Hitler loved how the white people took care of the red man, the Native Americans. It was asymmetrical warfare, which is just what Hitler did with the Jews. It was identical. Hitler did to the Jews, he put them in concentration camps, and then he put them in, he gassed them, right? So first he enslaved them, and he put them off into the reservation, right onto a own piece of ground or a spot that's different from them. When he didn't kill them, when he didn't outright kill them. So since there was this systematic murder, it's kind of incredible that the Jewish people were even rounded up. It's like they were wanting to do it, but they didn't want to do it, and they wanted to make it quick and efficient as possible, or maybe just one prison was doing it, and then that's where the people would just be, I don't know. But Hitler looked to the Native American genocide as inspiration for what he was doing. He used to read cowboys and Indians, and he was a cowboy. So asymmetrical warfare. The white people were more advanced when it came to guns. They also brought disease, which wiped out most of the people. But the white people, they pushed terrorism. So not only did they violently terrorize people, like on how, 9/11. So the Puritans caused a 9/11 on the Pequot. The Puritans and the Pilgrims also engaged in biological terrorism. So political terrorism, biological terrorism, by the spreading of smallpox. They would pass out blankets and clothing that came from people that had smallpox, and it would spread throughout the Native Americans. So another hole in the story with the 1621 feast is what the story of Squanto. Let's actually get into the story of Squanto. He was by himself when the Pilgrims came to Plymouth Rock, and also they didn't land on Plymouth Rock. There was no rock to speak of. They made that shit up. Eventually, they said, "Here's the rock where we landed," but that wasn't the case at all. So the Puritans, the Pilgrims, they found Squanto by himself. So Squanto was completely he was with somebody else, actually, my bad. There was two people that they came across. So they came across Squanto. Squanto was right next to a friend or whatever, but Squanto knew how to speak English. And the reason why Squanto knew how to speak English was because he was enslaved. He was captured and enslaved and was sent to Europe. Eventually he comes back to America, but he finds his entire family and village and everybody massacred or diseased to death. So he was by himself because white people murdered his entire family. Which is incredible that he would have the humility to embrace a new group of white people. And when he was negotiating with the white folks, he would be the in-between people for the Indians and the white folks. And eventually, they all turned on him, right? They all turned on him. And Squanto dies. He has a nosebleed, and then he dies. And a lot of people say that a nosebleed is an indication of being poisoned. So he could have been poisoned. Nobody knows how he actually died. He died pretty young, considering. He didn't die of old age. He died of, some ailment, either disease which caused his nose to bleed and he died of, or he was poisoned. So the legacy of Thanksgiving is the celebration of the massacre of Native Americans. It's a genocide of this country, and we need to start speaking the truth. We need to start speaking the truth about who we are as a country, who we are as a nation. When we fix the Native American problem, the Native American, injustice, then when we think about, American history, that's when we'll actually begin to purify ourselves. When we go back in history and we make right what was done wrong, we benefit today because everybody's white. Everybody in America's white. We're the Native Americans. They're all wiped out. So white people was able to get land, and then land was passed down. So it was grandfathered in. And so again, we need to know the truth about ourselves and the truth about our holidays. They're all fucked up. What does Easter have to do with Jesus resurrects, right? He dies for our sin, and then 3 days later he shows up, and then we all know that he's God. That's the story of Easter. But we have a big-ass bunny that goes around hiding these plastic eggs that has candy. That's Easter. Halloween's one of the most fucked up days. I don't even get Halloween. What is Halloween? So Halloween we have people that dress up like monsters and goblins and ghosts and slutty witches, and then that's supposed to stop all these dead spirits from capturing our souls. What the fuck are you all doing? And actually Halloween becomes so successful that the day was when the youth would just terrorize the entire neighborhood. So they tricked the youth into dressing up in costumes and going around getting pieces of candy. So they, created an event that the youth could do so they wouldn't be terrorizing everybody. Cabbage night. That's what the day before Halloween I always heard was cabbage night. The day before Halloween, people, Gallup County, they mudded all around Gallup County, splashing mud up all over the windows. They took all the political signs and they posted in the front yard. It was one of the coolest, most bizarre protests I've ever seen. So we need to learn the truth about ourselves. We need to learn the truth about all of our fucked up holidays. We need to talk about the Native Americans and what is justice. How are we going to, if we're the Puritans today, or back then, what would we do, and what can we do today in order to make things right? So The whole focus should just be on Native Americans. We should there should be a cultural regeneration. We should resurrect dead Native Americans, such as Chief Pluggy, but really all of them. Johnny Logan, Tecumseh, Blue Jacket, Little Turtle, Cornstalk, Blackfish. So we need to talk about the Native Americans, and we need to talk about, bring some of the different traditions and customs to life. It's a green corn festival, because what we're doing we're not doing it right. We're fucking covering this shit up, and we need to start telling the truth, okay? So, some truth. I just finished actually this paper about Kentucky, and while we're #1 in basketball, we're actually, the state of Kentucky is #1 for a whole shitload of stuff, okay? In 2012 and in 2006, we were #1 for the highest rate of cancer deaths. So more Kentuckians are dying of cancer than every other state in this country. Okay? We're #1 nationally for toxic air pollution. We're #1 in America for colorectal cancer incidents. We're #1 nationally for binge drinking. So we're getting lots of different cancers. We're getting totally drunk. All these coal companies are polluting everywhere, all these factories, all these emissions. One of the worst polluted states in the country, and we're all getting drunk. Colorectal cancer, #1 in America for oral cavity and pharynx cancer. So more cancer. #1 nationally for being the worst run state. #1 in America for the highest rate of lung cancer deaths, which is in 2007. Being the worst run state in 2010, that was a combination of being impoverished and having high unemployment and some other things. So it's just saying that Kentuckians don't know how to run their own house. They don't know how to run. It's not just a critique on government, but actually the whole state. So #1 for highest rate of lung cancer deaths. So people are dying. It's not just incidents. They're dying of lung cancer. Probably for smoking, right? First nationally to least likely have healthy habits, so they have poor habits. They're not exercising, they don't eat healthy, and they smoke. Those are the 3 indicators. Do you eat healthy? No. Do you exercise? No. Do you smoke? Yes. That's a Kentuckian. #1 in America for lung and bronchitis cancer incidents. That's 2012. So the deaths wasn't #1. So that's kind of a better. That means we're getting lung cancer diagnosed, but we're not dying as much from lung cancer as we were in 2007. Still getting the cancer, not dying as much. #1 nationally for overall toothlessness. That was 2003. So #1 out of all of America 10 years ago for having the least amount of teeth per person. #1 in America for colon and rectum cancer incidents. #1 nationally for toothlessness for folks 65 and older. That was 2004. So toothlessness overall in 2003, 2004 for folks 65 and older. Well, we're still #1 for. #1 in America for having the worst emotional well-being. That was 2012. So emotionally, we're not stable, and since we're not stable with our emotions, then we're probably not stable mentally. But worst emotional well-being, #1 nationally for having the fastest growing prison industrial complex. That was 2009 by the Pew Center. And so, we don't have money for education, but we're buying all these prisons. #1 in America for maintaining the filthiest, dirty public spaces. That was 2011. Our public spaces are not clean, they are filthy. We're #1 in America for having the dirtiest public spaces, right? And let's see, #1 nationally, having the highest rate of child deaths from child abuse and neglect. #1 state for the worst state for animal abuse, 4 years in a row. So we've got that distinction 4 years in a row, from 2007 to 2010. So, we're #1. We're #1. It's ridiculous, but it's the truth. We need to be talking about the truth on Thanksgiving Day. Every Thanksgiving Day, we need to talk about the Pequot War. We need to talk about the Pequot Genocide that the Puritans did, because that's the actual first Thanksgiving tradition that we started, and then from that conversation, comes all the other conversations. So the Pequot War, the Puritans, Massachusetts Bay Colony, the Mystic River Massacre, the massacre on Mystic Creek. You need to get these embedded into your psyche, because that's America. That's what makes America America.